apparently when he was a toddler and they would go visit with Grandma and Grandpa Reynolds, Mom didn't take toddler toys. She took electrical cords, extension cords, where the plug was removed, and he would hook up stuff. He would put the plug or the end of the cord, minus the plug, like in a couch or a chair, and then he'd wrap it around furniture and then pretend to plug it in. And anyway, he had electrical engineering on his mind from just a few years old. And then there was another story that wasn't what my mother wanted to have to remember, but apparently they were babysitting Grandma and Grandpa Reynolds with Larry. I don't know if I was there. I could have been. So he could have been just under around 4 years old. But anyway, when they went to pick us kids up, Grandpa Reynolds had taught Larry how to use a knife. And he was showing him how to shred newspapers.
Mm.
Uh, I don't know what possessed that particular game, but anyway, Mother was not too happy that her toddler young child was learning to use a knife, which brought to mind Larry always used a pocket knife, had one in his pocket as long as I remember.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure as he got older, um, even probably 9 or 10 years old, he would use it with electrical work to split the insulation off of the wires and do whatever he needed to do with the electronics. Originally, under the house, the basement only covered about half of the square footage. And back then, people would what they call dug it out, and they would dig out the dirt under the foundation where there was no room.
Mm.
So um, I don't know. Dad, some friends, maybe one of his friends, Don Jenkins, helped do that. But the final step after they cleaned all the dirt out, it was under my bedroom. Uh, so it would have been the back bedroom if you remember that house. All that was dug out. And then we had a gentleman come and put an outside entrance. So he put the door and put the concrete down and made the steps up to the back um, concrete pad by the garage. So
He
Dad then, once they opened that up, he built a bench, I think with the help of the neighbor, Mr. Powers. Um, and that bench is what they moved over to the Lincoln Street store.
Mm.
So anyway, it was a long bench, and that's where he first started out with radios, car radios, and he would repair those um, after he worked at the Ford garage, so nights and evenings.
Mhm.
And then he advanced to TVs, repaired TVs there. And then it got to the point where he built up enough business that he felt like he could do it full time, and that's when he quit. Dad started with a partner, uh,
Mm.
Gene Edwards. And yesterday, as I was looking through some of this history in the basement of our house, I came across some business cards, and I've got one of Dad and Gene. Uh, so I think that lasted about a year and a half. Um, and one of the factors was Larry could repair things better than Gene.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's
Yeah,
something.
but by then I think he was in junior high, and there was I don't know if it was a radio for or if it was a TV, but Gene couldn't fix it. It was his customer. And so he left it on the bench and he, went on other calls. So Larry came home after school and he figured out how to fix it. So when Gene came in and found out it was working, I guess he asked Dad, "Well, what did you do to fix it?" And Dad said, "Well, ask Larry. He's the one that fixed it." Yes, he
Oh,
followed the rules to the T. And that was part of life back then.
Hmm.
You listen to your parents and you learn to follow the rules. Now, part of that was our family and our grandparents. Grandpa Snyder was very much of a straight shooter too, and he was very devoted to the church, and so we just learned that behavior um, from family and from church. Um, and no, he didn't tolerate other people who didn't follow the rules very well. He used to ride his bicycle a lot when he was young, and we would go swimming a lot in the summer because the swimming pool was 4 blocks from our house. It was there where McDonald's is now.
Hmm.
So we would ride our bikes to the pool. Well, one day when he was done swimming, he went out and his bicycle was stolen.
Oh.
And he canvassed our neighborhood because he thought he knew who had done it. And sure enough, his bicycle was in this neighbor's several blocks away property.
Oh.
The boy would not agree that he'd stole Larry's bike. And Larry was not happy. Anyway,
Oh no.
of course, we had to go to the police department and file a report. And anyway, I think he got his bike back. But again, the other kid didn't follow the rules. Typically, he was always in trouble. And Larry, I couldn't handle that. But I think his best friend, as I'm remembering, was Ron or Ronnie Duckworth. And he lived right next door to Grandma and Aunt Genevieve on 3rd Street. He lived on the corner house there. His mother was a substitute teacher, and we loved her. She was a great teacher. His dad worked for one of the railroads, and they lived there until the dad got moved to St. Louis. And I think that was about junior high age for Larry.
Hmm.
But they ran around together a lot. In fact, they spent a lot of time, at least one summer, with bicycle tricks. They build ramps and go up, do all kinds of stuff. In fact, they even had a bicycle circus, and the whole neighborhood was invited, and our parents were invited. And of course, they were next door to my grandma Rennels. Well, Grandma Rennels made the um, cookies and the drink and all the refreshments. And in fact, Ronnie's dad videoed some of the circus. So somewhere, I think in your mom's house, is that video. I think we came across it at my mom and dad's house and gave it to him. But yeah, he was just a fun kid. Oh, he had a racer. When Dad was at the Ford garage, Dad would bring parts home that they didn't need. Had a big steering wheel and motor, and they built this race car, and he would ride it in the yard. That was after he was done with the Cub Scouts. You were in Cub Scouts too, weren't you?
Short while, yeah.
For a little bit. And do you remember the Pine Derby races?
Oh yeah, definitely. Hmm.
Okay, well, it was after that, after Larry was in that they talked about building a race car to use in the yard. It was pretty rustic, but oh, he had fun with it. While Dad
Sweet.
was a little bit miffed that he'd gone along with the idea because there was quite an area where Larry would drive a certain figure eight or something in the yard that there were no pieces of grass whatsoever. It was totally racetrack.
The answer is yes, he was himself. And I came to realize how good that was. So I came to quickly realize that I could count on him, that he would be there for me. And if I needed something, he would do it. Like one time, not long into it, some of us were going to fly to Cleveland, and I forget exactly what happened. Our transportation fell through, and I called him, and he dropped everything and drove us to Indianapolis.
Oh.
And that was a really big thing for him because he really, really guarded his study time.
Oh, wow.
So I knew how much he cared for me already, and that I could count on him in need. And I just came to realize what a good guy he was, I guess. I always had my nose in a book from the time I can remember. Even before I could read, I insisted that I be read to, right?
Mm.
He didn't like to read.
Mm.
I don't know, he may have read a handful of books the whole time I knew him, just for pleasure. He would read to learn,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So that was an interesting thing after we were married. He had no idea how much I was going to be reading because I didn't read when we were on dates. So that was a little bit of a bump, but not much. He'd be doing his thing and I'd be reading, whatever. But when we actually came together and did stuff together that might be technological was when he bought one of the early personal computers, not the early Apples. It was a Radio Shack color computer. And we we hurried to put you to bed at night, and we'd come in here and hook it to the TV and start programming. That was such fun writing programs. We both enjoyed it. I had learned to do it a little bit in college, when I went to Harvard College, and of course he had learned it a little bit, but mostly we taught ourselves. Yeah, that was fun. Well, of course, we were living in Schaumburg, and while we were in Schaumburg was when we started the process for a second child. We went through Lutheran Social Services, and they had an office. I don't remember what suburb it was in, one of the suburbs, but they also had an office in Peoria. So when we moved, we transferred offices. But we went through most of the approval and stuff up there. Dad had always had it in the back of his mind that he might like to come and take over the family business.
But he would mention that to you sometimes, like that would come about before it happened.
It was always in the back of his mind, and we'd talk about it a little bit. Like, for example, when he was with Motorola, they wanted to send him to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia
Mm-hmm.
for some reason or other. And of course, you know me, oh yeah, let's go. It'd be cool. But he said, no, no. He says, I don't think I want to do that and be that far away in case I decide to, quit and go to Charleston. And when we went to Chicago, when he took the transfer to Chicago, he said, that's a lot closer to Charleston in case I decide to, do that. And he was a good engineer, as you can imagine, designing things, and he really enjoyed it. But he was so good at it that they kept promoting him, right?
Mm.
And by the time we were in Schaumburg, he was I think it was called product manager. He was like a couple or three layers of management up from the actual designing.
Mm.
And he didn't like that as much, although he was good at it. And
Mm-hmm.
there were bosses above that were hard to deal with, and politics in the corporation and all that kind of thing. That's not what he signed on for.
Mm.
He wanted to do the work. So
Yeah.
that's why we just, he wanted to come back to Charleston. And I was a little reluctant because I had become a Lutheran in the meantime. But first we'd been LCA Lutheran, then we were ALC Lutherans. And in Charleston, we would be Missouri Synod Lutherans. And at that time, there were some big problems in the church, I guess you'd say, turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure that I would be happy as a Missouri Synod Lutheran.
Mm.
So we were thinking about it for a long time before he even said anything to his parents. And every time we would come to Charleston, usually Helen, Grandma Reynolds, she would want to fix a nice big family dinner. We were there on Sunday. So she might skip church that day. And Dad might think, I'm just going to sleep in, you know. So I said, well, I'm going to church. And
Oh wow.
because I wanted to see if I liked it.
Yeah.
And so I would go to church. I'd find Grandpa Snyder and we'd sit together and listen to Pastor Hackler. He was the pastor.
Mm.
And Pastor Hackler really put my mind at ease.
Oh
Now,
nice.
this is more about me than Dad, but I don't think Dad had a problem with it because he grew up in the Missouri Synod.
Mm.
So anyway, that was my only thing, and I got over that. So we were both fine with it. We both thought small town would be better for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was no place in Schaumburg that a child could have gone on his own, like walk to. Would have had to been taken everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't grow up that way. Dad didn't grow up that way. And we wanted our kids to grow up with a little more freedom than that too. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was good to come to Charleston. Dad had a dog. I'm sure Marcia told you when he was a boy. We had another dog when we lived in Florida that didn't work out so well, but so this time we decided we'd do it right and we'd get a breed that we knew would be good with kids, and we got it from a breeder and stuff. And you remember Zinger? Zinger and Dad were close.
How would you say
Well,
those?
sure, Dad was the one that got up and fed him,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it was a little more than that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, dogs will often pick one person to be a little more special. It wasn't that he didn't like the rest of us,
Yeah.
yeah. And I had him well trained to go wake Dad up if he needed to go out in the middle of the night instead of me. I just ignored him. Took such advantage of your poor father.
I just remember he would line up those milk bones on the table, like maybe four or five of them, and he would just feed one to Zinger after the other, one after the other. Zinger would chomp one after the other.
Yeah, I laid down the law that there would be no feeding from the table, but you guys all ignored it. If that's
Oh,
all.
and David, I think David did that too.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and then there was the lazy boy recliner. That's the second I
Mm-hmm.
remember of them being inseparable because I remember like every night Dad would sit in that chair and every night Zinger would sit nestled in.
Oh yeah, but he would come running and jump up there. It was cool.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
then the recliner began to lean a little bit on that side where he always jumped up on it.
Oh wow.
Eventually, we needed to buy a new one. And we were at the furniture store, and I was having Dad sit down. I say, okay, sit down. I say, well, there's no room for him in that one. Try this one. Yeah, there'd be room for him in that one. And the salesman's coming along and says, who are you talking about? What him? I said, the dog. He just didn't do like the rest of the kids did, you know? I mean, it's really hard to explain. It's really hard to explain. We had this parent group eventually that was a big help to us, people that did understand.
Mm-hmm.
And one time a radio person came in and interviewed us about autism. And I think we spent about an hour with that person talking about how it was to raise autistic kids and all that stuff. And then they packed up and left, and there were about 8 of us. We looked at each other and we said, we didn't really tell them what it's like. It's hard to tell. But Dad would just endlessly do stuff with him. Uh, and, he just had to drive that
Mm-hmm.
car. And Dad would get in the car with him and drive with him just everywhere. I don't think I would have had the patience to do that.
Right.
You probably remember we remodeled that outbuilding a little bit for him, but then that was not enough in getting him into a group home.
Yeah.
Dad really took the lead on that.
Yeah.
And then let's see. Yeah, he was in the group homes first. They were not good for him, not really.
Not really.
But at least it satisfied the court and it got him out of the house and a little bit of independence. And then he got into the CCAR program where he could live on his own with them helping him, and lived upstairs there at the Gray House for a while. And
Yeah.
finally got into subsidized housing. I think Dad really navigated through a lot of the red tape and paperwork for that. He really did.
Yeah.
No, I don't think he ever thought he was going to go into politics. And I don't think he really regarded what he did as politics, although there was certainly that element of it. But I think it wasn't partisan, of course. The city is nonpartisan. He saw it as doing what he could for his town. He knew he could, and he felt a responsibility, and he wanted things to work better. And so he got step by step into that. The mayors before Dan Kogel were not exactly the best examples of good mayors that you could find. Some of them had a big ego, and some of them, took advantage of their position and stuff. And the saying was always that in Charleston, you didn't want to cross the liquor license holders, that they pretty much had the power. I don't know. Some of that was true, I think. And they passed, at some point after we got here, they lowered the entry age to the bars to 19. You still weren't supposed to drink until you were 21, but of course you did. And high school kids from other towns started coming here. Then there was a really bad accident, and I think one got killed in drunken driving, going home and stuff. And that just really bothered your dad. So he got involved to be on that first liquor commission, and it really didn't do anything. There was divided opinion, and of course the bar owners didn't want to change anything. And then after the first Gulf War and Dan Kogel came back to Charleston, of course he was one of the top generals in that war, and he was a hometown boy here, and he retired and they moved back here. And everybody liked Dad, and he wasn't one of the prime movers of it, I don't think. But a lot of people thought, let's get him to be mayor. He'll be honest and he'll be good at it. And shortly after the Kogels moved here, there was this meeting to try to persuade him to do it, basically. And we did go to that meeting. And he did do it. And then he appointed Dad to the second liquor commission that did accomplish something, although eventually, I can't remember the exact timing of it, but they did raise the age again. And everybody said, oh, everybody goes to Champaign, well, yeah, they did. But anyway, so then he started going to city council meetings, and that's always the first sign, right? Do you remember once before he retired, you asked me, Mom, what do you think Dad will do when he retires? Remember that?
No.
Okay. Well, I said to you, oh, I don't know, maybe he'll run for mayor. And kind of like a throwaway, but I actually really believed that he would. But he hadn't really talked about it at that time. He did say he couldn't do it while he was working. He just wouldn't have had the time to give to it. So the mayor and the council, but especially the mayor, is supposed to be a part-time position, but he did it pretty much full-time. He went into the office a lot and really worked hard at it, but it was so good for him. He was so satisfied with that job. He really felt like he was doing good, and I thought he was really happy with it, despite, how sometimes there's frustrations and stuff, but it was just the right fit for him. The exercise. Well, he taught me a lot about what it meant to be a good church member, because I really didn't know. I remember when we moved from Florida to Schaumburg, we attended some different churches before we actually joined one. And I made some comment about, oh, well, we don't belong to a church now, so we won't have that offering money. We'll have, that we could save that or something. And he said, oh, no, whatever church we go to, we will give the offering
Mm-hmm.
because that's the right way to do it. Nobody had ever taught me that kind of thing before,
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought, well, yeah, I can see that. just hadn't occurred to me. He would always do the right thing.
Mm.
But it was kind of like with the city council thing. There were jobs that needed to be done that he could do, so he did them. But honestly, he never really talked about his faith that much.
Mm-hmm.
I had grown up, of course, in the mixed household, Catholic father, Methodist mother, so we really never talked much about that sort of thing at my home either. And I wasn't used to doing it within the family. So it
Mm-hmm.
took a long time before we could even do that. But he had his faith was very deep. I know it was.
Mm.
We we had that Bible study there for a long time. Of course, you weren't living here then, but with Marcia and Mick and Kay and Rich and Ramona and Bob Warman.
Mm-hmm.
And it started out as a purpose-driven life study, but when that was done, we just kept going.
Mm.
And I think that was real important to all 8 of us, but to Dad. And you know, it was outside. It was part of church, but not part of church. It was
Yeah.
a small group. That's what it was. So I'm in a good place. I am. It's not that I don't miss him, because I do every day, but um, life is good. And sometimes, sometimes I get sad thinking, oh, I wish he could have known his grandchildren. He so wanted to be a grandfather. But then I remember the place where he is even better than being a grandfather, if that's possible. So, yeah, I think, God helped me through that time. We had that, I told you a little bit ago about that Bible study. We were using Ray Vanderland's videos and Bible study books. He's done a whole bunch of them. They're based on tours he takes of Israel and archaeology and spiritual insights and stuff, and it meant a lot to all of us. And we had just a few months or maybe weeks before his death, we were ready to start a new one. And we had all agreed on one to do. And when I went to order it, I saw a different one. It was called Walking with God in the Desert or something like that. And it was about being with God through hard times. And I was drawn to it because I knew Dad was going through his cancer treatments and other people were having some, medical issues. And I thought, well, this is going to be a good Bible study for us. And I just made an executive decision to get that one instead. And when he died, that was such a help to me. It got me out of bed in the morning because I would do a little bit of it every morning first thing. Just walking with God through hard times. So that was important. And my life is good. I love your dad. I think about him every day. But you know, I'm happy.
He always liked to go places with me. I do little day trips, road trips, Peoria, Bloomington. Oh my gosh, I was everywhere. And I remember Dad would oftentimes fall asleep when we'd be driving around, and then he'd wake up and we'd be in like Effingham or Champaign or Terre Haute, and he'd be like, "What do we do? Where are we?" Like, well, we're driving about an hour away now. He was always there for me when I was, in times of need. He was always there for me when I wanted just somebody to be with. he was trying to be there with me as much as he could. Yeah, Lake Charleston is ultimately, I always think of Dad every time I go out there. I'm like, Dad, thank you. Because if you remember what Lake Charleston used to look like back when we were both kids, it was not a good place to be. But I really appreciate Dad being a part of getting that lake what it is now. Beautiful park. They've redone everything. They've torn down all the houses and cabins out there and just turned the whole place into like an entire city park.
Hmm.
And it's beautiful now. The playground equipment was very dated. I think there's only a couple pieces of equipment out there at that time, and they were broken, were not safe to use at all. And the place, there was trash everywhere. The pavilion was almost ready. It was like a pole barn, almost ready to. It was an eyesore. It had to go because of Dad's assistance. They were able to, so assistance in the voting process. They were able to beat the Lake Island Tract and make the park what it is now. So, with that said, the lake is a very beautiful place, and
Great.
I love going out there.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen all kinds of state people, all kinds of different license plates from all kinds of states all over the U.S. out there.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw the other day. I saw a couple California plates out there. I've seen an Alaska plate out there. And I remember talking to somebody one time about it, and they said, "Yeah, we heard about this when we were in town, so we decided
Hmm.
to come out and look at it." And they were from out west somewhere.
Hmm.
I don't remember exactly where, but yeah, I remember one time. I think it was one of our aunts, um, Aunt Betty. Um, because of Dad, I was able to help Aunt Betty diagnose her TV issue. She
Hmm.
had it on the wrong source, and she came back to McDonald's. I believe it was a couple days later. I saw her there again. She said, "David, you helped me fix my TV." Like, well, looks like Dad taught me something. I'm proud of you for all the work you've done for the city, and I'm proud of you for how you've made our city become, as far as that goes. As far as anything else in the family respect of it, I would tell him that I still do, actually. And I would say to him that I'm very proud of him for, I should say, no, I've learned a lot from you. And I am so happy that I got to be a part of this, that you got to be you are a part of our family, still are in heaven. And, but if I was going to say something to him, I would say I love him very much, even still, heavenly love. I will never forget him. We all never will forget him. And I think that he is a man that I think he's a man who deserved deserved a lot of respect, and which he got. But if I was to say something to him, I'd say thank you, Dad. I love you, and I still do. My little title for him is my father, who was a great man. I think of the motto of this TV store, the store that service built. I think that that can apply every day in our lives. I think that can apply when Dad was the base of who our family is. And that's my opinion.